Bienvenidas to Latina Literati. The channel for those of you that enjoy wonderful places, interesting people, both past and present, and some great books. Today, let's talk about Haiti. Without Haiti, there is no liberation of South America. Without Haiti, a large contingent that came to help the American Revolution in Savannah repel the British in 1779 doesn't happen. And in fact, you can see the monument to the Haitian contingent, to the Haitian heroes in Savannah if you visit. A young drummer boy by the name of Henri Christophe would go back to Haiti, help lead the revolution, and become its first president. So inspired was Henri Christophe by what he saw in the US, those people fighting for freedom from England. But as always, we want to start at the beginning, or at least long before anyone arrives from Europe, long before enslaved peoples are brought to the Caribbean. There were, of course, our indigenous ancestors that lived on the islands of the Caribbean, including this island, which they called Ayiti, which means the place of mountains, the mountainous place. There were three distinct groups of indigenous natives on the island of Ayiti: the Guanahatabes, the Taino or Arawak, and the Carib nations. The Carib obviously is from where the word Caribbean is derived. The Arawak or Taino group had traveled from the Amazon River, the Orinoco Basin. The others had arrived to the Caribbean from further in South America. So it's important to understand that our indigenous ancestors were all related. So the South American indigenous groups populate the Caribbean thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. And what many people don't realize is that in 1492, when the Europeans arrive, they call Ayiti La Isla Española, or later on Hispanola. But La Isla Española is what the Spanish who came in the caravelas first named the entire island. And it is the first place that a fort is set up. It is the first place where immediately the Spanish enslave the indigenous people. They insisted that they mine for gold. So the minute that the Europeans arrive on La Isla Española or Ayiti, they start enslaving everyone and saying, we want all the gold. As they deplete the gold, the French then take possession of the island. And as we've said before, the enslavement of the indigenous people, of the natives of Ayiti, means their absolute decimation from brutality, from disease. There were some groups that decided to take their own lives rather than live the reality that was slavery under the European masters. In 1625, the French take control of the island of Ayiti, and they name it Saint-Domingue, or Santo Domingo in Spanish. So they're bringing in tens of thousands of enslaved Africans every month, and they've planted sugar and coffee. And at its height, Haiti is supplying about half of the sugar consumed in Europe and about half the coffee consumed in Europe. So it really is the most precious colony on earth, because of the slave, produces the most income for France of anywhere in the world. And that's really important to understand, that Haiti, Saint-Domingue, La Isla Española, is a very rich country, very rich in resources, very rich land, and it is from the beginning exploited by the Europeans, for the Europeans, on the backs of the enslaved people that are being brought in every month in ships. Tens of thousands of enslaved peoples are being brought in because it has the cruelest form of slavery. So cruel that the slaves are starved, so cruel that immediately many of the African warriors that are brought in chains as soon as they can, they run to the mountains and they are able to live in what were called maroon towns. They were called marones or maroons. So, and they would be places that would eventually help foment the independence movement of Haiti. So by 1789, you have about 500,000 enslaved people living in the entire island of Saint-Domingue, and you have about 25,000 mixed race people, what were called gens de couleur, and you have about 30,000 people of European descent. Now remember, we're still talking about the entire island. It'll be another century before the church decides that half of the island will belong to France and half will belong to Spain. The part that belongs to Spain, they will continue to call Hispaniola, but the capital will be called Santo Domingo. And of course, today that's the Dominican Republic. And Haiti would be called Saint-Domingue until it's freed through its revolution, and then it takes the indigenous name Haiti as Republic of Haiti. The horrific conditions, the fact that the majority of enslaved people were African born, so many enslaved people had to be brought in because they were being starved and murdered by those in charge of the sugar plantations. Sugar work and sugar plantation is the hardest agricultural work there is anywhere. If you've never seen how sugar is grown, you should, because it's pretty demanding work and it's horrific if obviously you're forced labor in these horrific conditions. So in 1791, you have the Haitian enslaved people rise up. And the most incredible thing about this entire story is that you have the legacy of African warriors, you have the need of freedom, and you have the opportunity. And the Haitian people, when they rise up, they beat the French, they beat the English, they beat the Spanish. It's pretty amazing to think that this Haitian revolution had to fight off the greatest armies on earth. And they are, of course, thinking about what's going on in France, because you have the French Revolution going on as well. So that's why they're called, in some instances, the Black Jacobins, because they're taking on the ideas that are being brought over from France. Remember those? Equality, liberty, fraternity. So the gens de couleur, those of mixed race, are saying, hey, we want those laws to apply to us. And eventually the French government recognizes all French citizens that are not born to slaves as, no matter where they are in the entire world. But of course, the petit blanc, the poor Europeans, are outraged. And so fighting begins again. So there's a civil war after Haiti has already fought all these other different powers to gain their independence and become the first Black republic in 1804. Huge, huge, huge for the entire hemisphere, all of the Caribbean, and all of South America, and even North America, and of course Africa, is inspired by this first Black republic that is able to just throw off the bonds of slavery as well as colonialism. It's almost on the level of a miracle. But the Haitian Revolution is something that neither the United States, nor France, nor Canada could ever forgive. And so we'll talk a bit about how they've extracted so much from Haiti as a way of constantly trying to keep the Haitian people and the Haitian Republic in its place. In other words, how dare you be the first Black republic? How dare you be a beacon of hope to all people? How dare you help the liberation of South America? And how dare you think that you are first among free nations, which they were in this hemisphere? You can't really speak about the Haitian Revolution uprising and all of those efforts without speaking about one of its greatest generals, Toussaint Louverture, and he deserves his own video. An amazing man, and if I'm not mistaken, also African born. But I want to talk about another famous general, right now, Simón Bolívar. He is from South America, and he's trying to go around to gather troops and support for his liberation of what they called Nueva Granada, Venezuela, Colombia. Remember that outside of Brazil, Haiti has the most Africans brought to work the sugar and coffee plantations. And so when Simón Bolívar arrives and says, I'd like your support to liberate South America, he is warmly welcomed by the president, Chrétien, the then president of Haiti, welcomes Simón Bolívar and says, yes, we will give you munitions, we will give you supplies, we will give you ships, we will give you troops. The only thing we ask in exchange for the support is that you abolish slavery in South America. Because of course, they knew that the largest place where slavery was still in force was Brazil. And so really fascinating, this partnership. The first Black Republic helps liberate South America in exchange for asking that slavery be abolished. It takes several years, but eventually slavery is abolished. I think it's 6 years later that the new republics abolished slavery in South America. And so then really what we're talking about is on this hemisphere, there's only slavery in the US. So slavery is abolished in the southern hemisphere about 50 years before it is abolished in the northern hemisphere. So really interesting when you talk about ideas and progress and the idea that the South is in development. I would say that in this particular case, it was the North that was still backward and needed to develop and evolve the idea of equality for all. So about a third of the forces of Simón Bolívar in his fight to liberate South America from Spain were of either African descent or were a combination. In other words, they were Creole or mulattoes, as they call them. So a huge fighting force, very important in all of these different uprisings and all of these revolutionary efforts throughout South America. If you would ask me what is the biggest affront in the Caribbean history, there are several, but in 1825, France forces Haiti to pay $2.5 billion. That's with a B, $2.5 billion as reparations to slaveholders for their revolution and for their independence and for Haiti establishing the first Black Republic. Can you imagine? It's as if you were to be taken prisoner and then you are charged for the time you were in prison. This extortion is so disgusting that I would think that France, at the very least, should return those funds. That debt was not paid until 1947. It was discharged, so to speak, but that money really needs to go back to Haiti. It's an absolute disgrace that France would continue to keep those funds that it extracted through extortion. And then there's the US, right? So in 1804, Haiti establishes the first Black Republic, but the US embargoes it. Does this sound familiar? Oh wait, embargoing a nation you don't agree with in the Caribbean. So the US doesn't even acknowledge or recognize Haiti as a country until 1862. And of course, that trade embargo doesn't help. Here, Haiti, 100 years before, has sent 500 heroes to help in the US Revolutionary War. And the US turns around and says, no, we don't like the fact that you're a Black Republic, and we're not going to recognize you until 1862. And in 1925, the US decides to invade. Why? Because the US at all times wants Wall Street and the Wall Street and corporate interests protected. And if you look through the history of all of the nations the US has invaded, just follow the money. Who's making the money and whose interests are being preserved by that invasion? And you'll see, it's the corporate interests. I wish I could tell you, oh, this is different. Nope, same story. So incredibly, the US employs forced labor. So the US is forcing Haitians to build the roads it needs, to build the buildings it needs, to do whatever it needs. So basically it's reintroducing forced labor for the Haitian people to extract whatever resources it wants. It also changes the constitution and says foreigners can now own land, which was not allowed before. So all of a sudden you have US corporations taking over the interests, for example, the different mineral interests that are there. You also have the US taking control of Haiti's finances. That's insanity. They take all the money from the central bank and say, we're just going to keep this for you. Yeah. So not only do you have the extortion from France, but now you've got the pillaging by the US, right? So now we're up to 1925, several decades of US occupation. So we're not talking about just in and out. I mean, the US was there for, I think it was over a decade, extracting what it wanted on forced labor, taking the Haitian money. It's insanity. And then installing these dictators. So when you say, oh, why is Haiti the way it is? You know what? There is a long history here, and a lot of it was paid for by our tax dollars. So incredibly, you have all these strong men, you have a lot of pressure and tension to have a democratically elected government. And in fact, in 1990, the first democratically elected president of Haiti, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, is elected. And a year later, there's a coup, because all of a sudden he says, you know what, France, return the money to Haiti. You know what, US, you need to stop intervening. We're going to reallocate resources to ensure our people have access to education, to healthcare, infrastructure, and we're going to write our own destiny. And so that was just unacceptable. So he is ousted in a coup a year later. But in 2004, he is again elected. A few years later, he is ousted again. So he's the only person in history that's been ousted twice by a US-backed coup. And of course, in place are put really corrupt dictators, but they do the bidding of the State Department and Wall Street. And of course, that's the most important thing. More recently, there have been terrible natural disasters, hurricanes, earthquakes, and even the UN quote-unquote peacekeepers have brought terrible, terrible disease. You may have read that the UN peacekeepers brought cholera that killed tens of thousands of Haitians to the island. It's just been horrific what outsiders have done to Haiti and the ways that they have ensured that Haiti can't go forward. I think it's important to look at Haiti today as we see that gangs are basically in control of the streets, as we see that the government is absolutely inefficient, as we see that the only thing that matters is that its resources continue to be extracted, and of the terrible treatment of the United States of the Haitian refugees that are legally seeking asylum. I think it's important that you have all of this historical backdrop as you take a look at what's being presented in the news today, because I don't think that they talk about all of the injustices and all of the wrongs that need to be righted by the US government, by the French government, in order for Haiti to be given a chance to move forward. As we said before, Haiti was an inspiration to the hemisphere, to the entire hemisphere. It was an inspiration to Africa. It was an inspiration to all who were seeking freedom and justice and equality. And so we should be grateful, and we are grateful to Haiti to continue to be a beacon of hope. And we stand in solidarity with the Haitian people in their demand that France return the extortion of money that was paid, and that the US make right all of the terrible things that it has done to Haiti. And at the very, very least, allow Haitian asylum seekers to make their case before the courts, as they are allowed to under both national and international law. Haiti has the right and deserves the opportunity to be rebuilt as a nation, carving out its own destiny, its own future by the Haitian people, for the Haitian people. And now on to my favorite part of the video, book recommendations. But of course, I want these book recommendations to be books that will help you delve in even greater detail the Haitian history. So the first is called The Black Jacobins Reader, and it talks about the Haitian Revolution, the personalities, and what led up to it, because it's very detailed. This is very dense. There's a lot of things going on. So I hope that if you're interested in that part of Haiti's history, you'll take a look at the book The second book is called From Columbus to Castro, The History of the Caribbean from 1492 to 1969. Also, again, an overview of the history of the whole area, which I think is interesting because no nation is an island, even if this particular nation is an island. The interplay between República Dominicana and Haiti is also very interesting. They're completely intertwined and not always united. And the last book is called A Path Out of Poverty by Dr. Paul Farmer. We lost Dr. Paul Farmer this past year, but he was just an amazing man. I had the privilege to meet him when he received an honor here in California, and it was just the most humble man, Harvard-trained doctor, and he was able to eradicate tuberculosis, this place in the middle of Haiti, because he used a process that he called accompaniment. And what that means is that we don't decide what the beneficiaries of these programs need. They decide what they need. And they decide when that accompaniment is complete, when the services that they need are no longer needed. And he was able to treat tuberculosis because he treated the whole person. So nutrition, hygiene, a family situation, housing. I mean, it's just amazing. And so Dr. Paul Farmer is an inspiration to all who want to help others. He learned the Haitian Creole when he worked his summers between his semesters. He worked with Haitians in the fields in Florida. An amazing man, and just what he started, Partners in Health, continues to serve people around the world. And so I think that's a great place to end the video. Just a real beacon of hope, the work of Partners in Health. And I'd encourage you to take a look at their website and any one of Dr. Paul Farmer's books, Mountains Beyond Mountains. But this one, A Path Out of Poverty, is one that specifically discusses how do you change this view of the world? How do you work to help others, and how do you stand with those who need help, shoulder to shoulder, accompanying them as they make the changes in their society that they need to lead better lives? And so that's our challenge. So as always, thank you so much for coming to the end of the video and joining us on this journey. We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of this video or what videos you'd like us to publish, any topics that you'd like us to talk about. Thank you so much. Please subscribe if you haven't. And as always, we wish you mucho salud, mucho cariño y mucho amor. Gracias.